Good day, Money Masters. It's me, SJ, again, and we are kicking off with a two-part series on budgets or budgeting, how to do your budget. In today's episode, we will do the easy part. I'm going to explain to you just how to set up your budget, how to use a spreadsheet or a piece of paper to do that, and what you should consider including in that budget. And then in the second episode, which I think is even more important, I'm going to share with you how a budget is going to help you, how you can use it to understand and master your money. But for today's episode, let's rock and roll. Okay. Today should be a relatively short piece or short video. All I want to do today is to help you to prepare or construct your budget using a spreadsheet. You can use Excel spreadsheet, Google Sheets, any type of other open source software you can find. And if you don't have access to that, you can use a piece of paper. Just remember, keep that piece of paper for future use, because in episode 2, I'm going to show you how you're going to use your budget to make you a money master. Obviously, if you're using a spreadsheet, save it for future use. Before I dive into a sample spreadsheet, I need to take you back to something I've shared in previous videos. I've shared think formulas, which is the way I want you to start thinking about your money. And think formula 2 said the following. You have your income or you receive your income, you take off your savings and your giving first, and then the money that is left for spending. You pay yourself first. There is another way to do this if you don't want to follow that. That goes like you receive your income, you spend your money, and you hope that there is something left at the end of the month. Hope is not a good strategy when it comes to mastering your money. And in addition to that, most of us run out of money before we run out of month. That is one of the ways a budget's going to help you. We'll talk about that in episode 2. So let's get into that sample spreadsheet I prepared just to give you some tips and some hints on how to prepare a quality budget that's going to help you master your money. Let's have a look at that. And today I'm up here in the corner for the first time. Okay, let's get going with our spreadsheet. Remember, think formula 2, I said saving and giving comes off first. So right at the top of my spreadsheet, I've got my savings rate and my giving rate. The other reason I recommend a spreadsheet that is if you change one of these numbers and you used formulas in your spreadsheet, it will update your entire spreadsheet if you change a number, and that is highly recommended. As an example, 10% of 10,000 bucks income is 1,000 bucks in saving. But as I want to increase my savings rate over time, if we change that to 20%, you can see it updated that number and updated my entire spreadsheet. I'm going to stick to 10 for today, and 10% in saving and giving is the minimum that I would recommend that you start with, and hopefully you can increase that over time. So the first part is easy. Your income you probably know. You're going to insert your income there, you're going to take your saving and your giving off, and in this case you've got 8,000 bucks left for spending. Now the next part is extremely important, because the better you construct the rest of your spreadsheet, your expenses, the better information it's going to give you. In IT they've got a term called GIGO or GIGO, I think it's GIGO, garbage in, garbage out. You don't want to put garbage in here. You want to make sure when you record your expenses you do it properly and you consider all the expenses. I'm going to show you one or two examples of how I think you should think about it. in my example spreadsheet, I didn't record every single expense I could think of. This is just an example, but I will share before the end of this video some of the major expenses that you should consider and record in your budget. So let's have a look at a couple of expenses. You may be paying rent, or you have a mortgage payment or bond repayment if you own a property. You may be using public transport, or you have to put fuel in your vehicle if you own your own one. You have to eat. There will be some other groceries, things that are non-food related, cleaning products, maybe some beauty products, maybe shaving cream, and for me, not a hair gel, but maybe you use something, a hair product. Okay, internet, to have internet either on your mobile device or maybe a fiber line into your home. And then for most expenses, especially the bigger ones, I would recommend that you record them the way I'm going to show you an example for subscriptions. So as an example, what I did here is I broke down subscriptions into the smaller subcategories. And I think this is important because it will also highlight to you if there's any single area in your expenses that stands out, that may be quite large relative to other expenses. And it's important to know this. So IT, for me, I use Microsoft Excel to power my computer. It runs on the Microsoft operating system, so I have to pay them an annual subscription to have the Microsoft license. Training, if you belong to any sport club or gym or anything like that where you pay a monthly subscription or membership fee, that would go in there. Professional body could be an example. If you have a certain qualification, once you've completed your education, to retain that qualification, or to say, let's say I'm a chartered accountant, or to use something like CFA behind your name, Chartered Financial Analyst, you have to pay a monthly or annual subscription to that professional body. Streaming or gaming would be something that almost all of you will have these days. It would be a Netflix or a YouTube Premium or YouTube Music or Apple Music, any type of subscription. Or if you're a gamer and you have to pay a monthly subscription to a gaming platform, that's important. What I would also record in that case very clearly is if you are a gamer and you're doing in-game purchases, you've got to record that. Those things can accumulate very quickly and bite you in the buttocks if you're not careful. Record them very carefully. Clothing, you may own a vehicle and have to repay the financing on that vehicle. Insurance, these are some of the expenses, but basically what we do in this case, these numbers will count up to that one single number. We'll sum all these numbers or count them together to get to one single expense number. In this case, I had 8,000 left to spend. I spent 7,450 bucks. And I end up with a little bit extra in the green. So in finance, we often use in the green or in the red. In the green often refers to this case where you have money left at the end of the day. It also sometimes refers to if you're making a profit on something, you're in the green. And in the red is where you not want to be. So let's assume this was a very high number. That's lower. Then my spreadsheet would update. That number will also scream out at me now because relative to some of these numbers, it is a very high number. So it's something I want to think about and focus on. Do I have too many subscriptions? Do I use all the subscriptions that I've got? Okay, but in this case, you'll end up in the red where you don't want to be. Now, if you want this to be a tool that can help you a lot, which a budget is, you have to do the work. So where do you get these numbers that I mentioned? If you are going to start receiving an income and you haven't started spending money yet, you're in a perfect position to set up your budget, and you can use the spreadsheet I showed plus the slide that's coming up now a little bit later to see expenses that you can consider. For the rest of us, you have to go and do the work, which means you've got to go to your bank app or website, download the last 3-4 months worth of statements and see where you spend money. The other thing that I would also suggest is when you set up your spreadsheet is to split your expenses between recurring expenses and non-recurring expenses. In other words, expenses that you know you are going to spend money on each month. That could be things like rent and food and so forth. And then non-recurring would be expenses that you pick up, the things that you spend money on, but perhaps not every month, or not even perhaps even the same amount every month. So split your expenses into recurring and non-recurring. The other tip I would give you is if you have, let's say, things like annual subscriptions or things that you pay for every 3 months or every 6 months or every year, take that number and divide it by the correct number so that you get a monthly expense that you can insert in your budget. You may not be expending it that month, but you've got to keep that money separate. What you don't want is you set up your budget, you've got a non-recurring expense that may become quite a large expense because maybe it's an annual expense, and then you didn't put it in your budget, and then all of a sudden, once a year, you've got one massive extra expense that you didn't budget for that comes unexpected. You don't want that. Okay. So take your bank statements, go through them more than 1 month, I'd say 3, 4, 5 months, check your expenses, start recording recurring versus non-recurring, break them down. So even like something like food, I buy food at these 2 or 3 stores and I spend money on food at these takeaway places as an example. As I showed in that subscription, how I broke down the subscription expense. Okay, I did mention that I would share some of the more common expenses that you have to think about and make sure you record. So let's have a look at some of those expenses, and you can go and have a look if you remember to record them in your budget. So the expenses I mentioned in that sample spreadsheet are important, and most of you will incur almost all of them, if not all of them. But here are a couple of extra expenses or other expenses that you must check if they apply to you. Property tax, if you own a property. How do you pay for your electricity and water? Maintenance to your property, whether it's a rental or you own it, there'll always be some maintenance that you have to pay for. Medical aid, also called medical insurance. Very important. If you can afford that, I would highly recommend it. School fees or your ongoing education. So school fees, you can almost have a heading, a major heading for children and all the expenses that apply to the kids. Pets. Pets these days cost you quite a bit of money. Pet maintenance, pet grooming, pet medical care, pet clothing these days, a little jacket for winter. Okay, so pets, you must record that they can become quite expensive. And something like bank costs. Remember, you don't get your banking for free. There's a cost to that, and it's important to record and know it. Okay, so the expenses on the sample budget or spreadsheet, plus these ones, they do cover quite a lot. A lot of them will be major headings with sub-categories under them. But that's what you can use and think about. And then in episode 2, as I mentioned, we are going to see how a budget is going to help you on your journey to become a money master. If you're still watching this video, thank you for sticking with me to the end. I appreciate it, you legend. Remember, you can still also follow me on Twitter, at MoneyMasterSJ on Twitter. And whenever you see this icon, you can subscribe to the channel. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.